that area is a safe place to do their businesses. The lagoon is another story. But the lagoon, at least during the summer, was still active Monday through Friday with barges and tugboats and stuff. And there is, again, some sensitive, I know, wildlife habitat, both fish and avian, in that area that I think some of the environmental groups would be really concerned about bringing towed water sports into there.
Josh, can you pull up a graphic for us so that, you know, we have a little bit better reference? I'm sorry.
And for the board's information, the Holgate Channel Slow No Wake Zone. So the orange hash marked, this is
Hey Josh, is there any way that you can zoom that in a little bit?
We can zoom way in. So this is all Slow No Wake. This was a rulemaking in 2009 where this part of the Holgate Channel and all this was designated Slow No Wake. As Member Jackson pointed out, there are still active gravel operations. I know that there are environmental concerns in here with water quality. I also know that there are some sensitive things about fish and wildlife. I'm not the expert on that, so I'm not going to speak to it more than that. But I know there are special concerns with the Ross Island Lagoon that if the board considered going back on this Slow No Wake zone, I think there would be a significant amount of information that the board should consider before potentially going that route.
Laura, how about?
So then the outside of Ross Island right there is what Member Withey was asking about. And so that's what you were commenting about there is because right now that is part of the current rulemaking for the proposed pass-through zone. So that was the question about whether or not that would be available, or if we didn't include that in this, if that would be an adequate area for some wake surfing activity. Vince?
Yeah, my question's for Josh again. So from the falls to, say, West Lynn, how many miles was that? Because I know you said Elk Rock to Portland, but what from the falls to, through Lake Oswego to West Lynn, how many miles is that? Because there's a lot of people that live on that stretch of the river that recreate with wake surfing and what have you. So, for them, that's what we're more concerned with is how far is that? It's like you said 13 miles, or was that?
I'm just giving you an exact measurement.
Yeah.
So the falls are at roughly river mile 26 and a half. Again, that Hawthorne Bridge area where below which wake surfing would be completely unimpacted is roughly river mile 13. So to answer your question, Member Castronova, about 13 miles.
Yeah. So again, that's a lot different than 6 miles. So obviously that's going to take quite a bit, a half hour, a lot of fuel. Again, these are folks that live on the river. And, one thing I learned, with the Newburgh pool is there was definitely 2 to 1 of people that lived on a river that really didn't want the river, the rules. And so there's a lot of people in that stretch that, as I went on that tour, they have wakeboard boats. So I would, again, going with public testimony, I don't know who's who, but it sure seems like there's an awful lot of people that like to recreate in that area. And that would be a long haul for them to, to drive all the way down 13 miles and what have you. I'm just, this is some of the testimony I've heard from the upper. I'm sure it's the same with the lower. So that seems like a pretty good, chunk of time and fuel just to get to a surf zone. And then they got to go back. Go ahead.
Craig, go ahead. And then Laura.
Yeah, I want to go back to my inquiry about wake surfing. Between north end of Ross Island and Hawthorne, is that a potential wake surfing area, Laura?
That's actually why my hand was up. Josh, can you put that map up and zoom it a little bit?
Is this what you're looking for right here?
Can you scroll it so we show a little bit more of Ross Island? So we can show like the Hawthorne yeah, it's a little bit better. I mean, I think in terms if you take away existing and historic users of that waterway, and that's one of the things that, I mean, is really important to me is, you know, we've got River Place Marina, we've got the other, the Landing Marina, we've got Willamette Sailing Club, and a lot of things in that zone. And these are uses that have been, in some cases, have been there since like the 1970s, early 1980s. Wake surfing probably could function there, but we also, again, have put in investments in habitat restoration. The Zidell property, which spent millions of dollars to environmental remediation and habitat restoration, is in there. And they've commented, both one of their biologists commented this go round, their property manager commented the last go round about damages to their property, and what their shoreline buffering was designed to do versus what it's being impacted by large wakes. And that's kind of one of the things here is this whole wake surfing thing is something that has exploded in the past, maybe, I don't know, 7 to 10 years, when things were designed for different stresses and the waves are getting bigger. And so sure, it might be, in the grand scheme of things, a place where wake surfing could occur, but there's been so much other stuff going on in that area. I have concerns. And again, it's not necessarily consistent with City of Portland and statewide planning goals.
Vince?
Just an observation. Obviously, that's a very busy stretch of the river, but it's not just wakeboard boats. I mean, we've got cruisers, we've got the jet boat. I mean, there's all kinds of users in that make waves and make waves as big, if not bigger, than some of these wake surf boats. So to kind of classify that it's just wakeboard, I mean, I don't think that's accurate. I mean, there's a lot of boats, you know, that we saw this summer that weren't just wake surf boats that can cause a lot of waves. So to just kind of, again, and to single out wakeboard or wake surf boats, I don't think that's correct. There's a lot of boat traffic on that that also contributes to the same amount or size of wakes. So, but again, we seem to always blame the wake surf boat. I'm just being honest. That's my observation.
Okay. Well, any other comments here, Vince?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think this is a far better plan, in my opinion. I mean, obviously, that's why I'm here, and so I would like to see what the other board members think. So I don't know if we've discussed enough, but I mean, I would like to make a motion to at least look at this new proposal, and with doing that, obviously, you know, if this is the route we're going to go, we need to rescind, you know, we're basically say no to the rules that we have on the plate today, and rescind the rules that we made back in October, including, you know, the Holgate Channel extension, and see if this is a better option for everybody involved. And I think that's all we're looking at, is just for fairness, something we think will promote safety, will have less effect on, you know, private business, small business, and then, you know, see how that goes. I think it could be implemented before summer. I don't think it's not as complex as it seems. So I know I would like to make a motion to adopt this new proposal, or to at least open it up for rulemaking.
Laura?
Vince, you said something there that can kind of confuse me. Is part of this proposal to actually rescind the Holgate Channel no wake zone?
That was the proposal, yes. Not the entire Holgate Channel, but what was opened up, that has been opened up, that was closed in the October meeting. Because again, that's going to be more room for wake surfers to not be in front of, on the other side where we have the pass-through zone. So we're trying to open up some area. Can that be negotiated? Yes, that this is part of this motion. And that could be changed later on, but that's the part of this motion that, does that make sense?
Okay, so just for clarity purposes here, your motion on the table is to rescind the pass-through zones that were passed in the October meeting and to not approve the rules in front of us. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the Holgate Channel extension that was voted on too, that we rescind that.
That was part of it. And so then, okay, so that's your motion, and then to move forward with a new proposal.
That is correct. And then something that we can, provide, the user groups can provide to the board members, and then work on time limits, like as far as the the 10 o'clock, where no wake sports at all in that one area. And that was from Hawthorne all the way to Elk Island. So that could be changed during our rulemaking process. So yeah, but that is what I have on the table.
Okay, that's your motion.
That is my motion, yes.
Okay, Craig?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the new proposal, as Laura is, but I would object to rescinding anything until we've had a chance to look at it. What I would like the board to do is try to get this right, as some people pointed out. In so doing, I think we need to table the action today until we've had a chance to look and consider the new proposal. I think Josh needs time to do some staff work on it and give us some feedback. I am concerned about having to open up the public process again and to delay the implementation of whatever we're going to do. So I am concerned about that. If we're going to look at this, I think we would have to do it in pretty quick order and have a special meeting in a couple of weeks or a month. Josh is shaking his head, so I need to give him a chance to respond to that.
I'm sorry, Member Withey, I didn't mean to. The earliest the board could vote on a proposal like that after getting public comment is probably actually April, given that things need to be filed with the Secretary of State's office by the 1st of the month. They usually take roughly a week to review it. So I don't think I could get something on public comment for February, which means we would have to solicit public comments in March and then vote on it in April. So it doesn't necessarily require, if that's the route that the board goes, that wouldn't even require a special board.
No, I'm
meeting.
not talking about going out to public comment now. I'm talking about giving a board a chance to look at it and see if we want to consider it for going out to public comment. So what I'm suggesting is we might want to table taking any action today until we've had a chance to look at this proposal and see if it's worth considering.
Yeah, I think that's all that he wants to do right now is he's proposing to table this and then have you come back with Vince's proposal just so that we can visualize what it is that he is saying and do a comparison between what we have on our plate today and what is being proposed today by Vince. Is that essentially what you're asking, Craig?
Exactly. You did a much better job of explaining it. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So, Vince, did you have something else to add?
Well, I think in the spirit of getting it right and giving the board members time to digest this, I mean, I'm not opposed to that one bit. I want to do the right thing. I know this group wants to do the right thing, and to rush into any rules I see in the past that has kind of came back to bite us. So yeah, I have no problem with having this group get out this proposal, have us look over it, see what, maybe define some gray areas that we can adjust. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
So at this time, the next board meeting that we have scheduled is not until April. So in order to do something like what Craig would like to see, we would need to schedule a board meeting probably at the latter part of February, a special board meeting just to deal with this. But I'm not sure that that's is that, Josh, I apologize, enough time to throw all this extra work on your plate?
Thank you, Chair. So as far as getting a proposal together for you to look at, I mean, I wrote down some notes based on Member Castronovo's proposal. No, I think I can get that to you in relatively short order. If the board then met in mid-February and decided to go with some sort of amended proposal, the timeline starts to become a little bit challenging for successful implementation for this upcoming year. It may be doable. We also learned in 2020 that dealing with a rule change without too much notice in the Newburgh poll becomes especially challenging. And we learned some lessons this year, I think, that show why that's not. Trying to turn around and implement rules 2 months after their passage is a challenge, as you can expect, if it's in the middle of the voting season or even at the beginning. So those are just considerations from my point of view, but I'm not going to get in the way of your decisions.
Laura?
One of the things that's going to take a lot of outreach and time of discussion and stuff is this whole temporal restriction thing, both changing of what the months of start and finish dates are and putting time restrictions like 10 a.m. because, again, there are so many different user groups in this area that have long established programs. Willamette Sailing Club, for example, and their little kids sailing program. You don't get little kids to do things before 10 a.m. The dragon boats, especially when we start talking about the city of Portland, the sister city Rose Festival dragon boat things, they have their time season. It's established as part of the Rose Festival. And there's some of, excuse me, but there's some of the clumsiest people on the water in action pretty much from sunrise to sunset every day. Allowing wake surfing during their training time is probably going to be a non-starter with the Portland Rose Festival organization. So and to develop a proposal like this, I don't think we would have something, even getting those parties to the table in February, much less have something that would really be workable for the 2021 season.
Vince?
Oh, I was just going to point out that the sailing club would be in a no water sports zone all day. I mean, that in front of that club, you know, with the sailing club, that is a pass-through zone. So there will be no towed water sports in there, no matter what time it is. So just to kind of clear that up. That's all I have on that.
Okay, so, and just for clarity and for procedural purposes right now, we have a motion on the table by Vince, but we have no second. So if no one is interested in offering a second on that, then that motion will die on the table right now. Okay. So moving forward then, we would either need to have a motion on this agenda item to move forward with it, item E, as, you know, some portion of the staff recommendation, or we would need a motion to table this and explore future options.
I'd like to make a motion to table this and give the board time to look at this new proposal and see if this is something that could work. I just think there's a lot of good to it, and I think it better expresses the compromise of more stakeholders. So that would be my motion, to table what we have now. Let's research this. Let's see if this is something that can work, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so we have a new motion on the table to table item E. And do we have a second for that one?
Yeah, this is Greg. I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second just to table this for now. Is Director Warren is out of the building, is that correct? Yeah. So go ahead.
This is Jennifer. Director Warren is currently away from this meeting right now. He's with another meeting,
Okay.
which should be done in maybe 10-15 minutes. And then
Okay.
he'll be-
Thank you, Jennifer. So we would need to look at a special meeting to deal with this. Would be, my preference would be to do it sometime, as soon as possible. We would have to have adequate public notice to be able to have a special board meeting. Jennifer, what would be the shortest notification for an additional special public meeting?
Sure, early, we would want to give 2 weeks. I would say the earliest we could do a special board meeting would be that week of the 15th of February.
And Josh, what does that do for your timeline?
It would compress it if we were trying to do implementation this year. Again, it's probably not unworkable, but again, we have conference calls set up with most facility providers, law enforcement, any stakeholders that we could get a hold of to try to help us with implementation already set up for mid-February. I mean, because true implementation is going to take 6+ months to do well. So that does potentially put a hit, a little bit of a hitch on that. I guess I would go back to the amount of work that's gone into this starting October of 2019 until now. I know that there's a lot of people watching this meeting right now that are looking for many partners, but are looking for a resolution, so to speak. So that's something that I would just encourage the board to keep in mind.
Okay, so we have a motion for item E to be tabled at this time to and come back and address that at a special board meeting to be determined approximately in the middle of February would be my guess. So is there any discussion on the tabling of this item at this time? So we will go ahead and vote on that motion that's on the table here. So we are going to need to do probably a roll call vote. I'll go ahead and call everybody's name out. So item E, the consideration of rulemaking would be tabled. So Member Castronovo,
Yes.
Member Withey,
Yes.
Member Moran,
Yes.
Member Jackson,
No.
and I would vote no also. So the motion to table this has passed for a 3-2 vote. And so I would like to set the meeting, the special board meeting for sometime the week of the 15th so that we can get this back on to our docket and, encourage as much participation as possible from our partners that would help to implement any new rules that would be put into place for this summer. Josh.
Just a question for the board. What would you want from staff between now and that point?
We would need to have a comparison of the proposal that Vince has put forward. And anything additional? Craig, what would you?
I would just like to see the proposal in writing and
In writing.
Make sure I'm looking at the same thing as everybody else and how that changes what we already have on the table.
We will likely be inundated with information coming from stakeholders, local, state agencies, all that in the next couple weeks. Is that material that the board wants to see? I mean, are you interested in? We're going to get public input whether we solicit it or not, but is that something the board's interested in?
I don't know that additional public input would help me at all. I think we've had a lot of that. I think it's enough information now that we ought to be able to make a decision. All I want to do is consider this option and make sure that we're treating everybody fairly. And we each need to understand what it is. I heard Vince's description, but unless we see it in writing on paper and we can all understand what it is, then we're not all voting on the same thing. So that's my concern.
Okay, Vince, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, is this, so getting Josh the proposal, that would be the best option, and then he could distribute it to the board members? Is that that's obviously what you want them to do? So, correct?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
Laura?
There's the proposal for us to look at, but there's components of that proposal that still need to be nailed down before we as a board can vote on it, and before it has to go out to public comment. And so, I mean, again, the big thing to me is the temporal restriction and the date restriction part of this. That's going to solicit a whole lot of public input from, I think, public agencies, from small businesses that teach classes on the Willamette, from the individuals who use the Willamette, as well as organized boating clubs that use the Willamette. As Josh had said, as Director Warren said, there has been a ton of work done on this. And the biggest thing is, regardless of what's going to happen out here, education and enforcement are the biggest things that we need to be focusing on. And we're not going to get good enforcement, and we're not going to see the benefits of an education program for a couple of years. We run the risk of having a slipshod program in place for 2021, when a number of organizations, I think, are still going to be operating under COVID protocols, which means a lot more single shells and single kayaks and single canoes out. I really think that we need to take an action today, study this, and maybe come back and revise it for boating season 2022. But we need to get something that organizations, law enforcement, park operators, all of those partners that Josh has been working with, that they can start getting that message out now. Because like you said, it's a 6-month process. If we adopt something in April, it's not going to be in place in an operable, well thought out way for 2021.
Well, and I don't disagree with you on that, Laura, but we did just vote to table item E. And so at this point, what Craig is asking for is just a visual to be able to see this, to be able to decide if that is where the direction we want to go, or if we want to continue on with our item E that is actually completely laid out right now. So if that's my understanding, is that correct, Craig?
Yeah, you covered it.
And Vince, that's and Colleen, since she was a part of that yes vote, that is what they're asking for, is just a comparison.
Yep.
Before we move forward on changing directions and going out for public comment.
Correct.
I'm looking for the feedback that Laura just gave us, but feedback off something that we've all are looking at together.
It's unfortunate that this didn't come around a little bit sooner, so that we could have been a little bit more prepared for this meeting to be able to get something in place. So I think that in the spirit of this action and the workload that we've now given to Josh, we're going to go ahead and move on to item F, since we have already tabled item E. Thank you very much, Josh, for everything that you've done on this and for everything that you're going to be putting forward in the future. We appreciate your work.
Thank you, Chairly.
So item F is consideration of rulemaking for OAR 250-020-0073, which is boat operations in Crook County. I'm sorry. And we have Dorothy Deal, who is coming into the room right now. Will be just a second before she is seated and ready to go. Okay, take it away, Dorothy. You're going to need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. There we
Okay,
go. Now we can hear
I
you.
apologize for that. Chair Early, members of the board. This option to adopt rules originated from a petition by the Crook County Sheriff's Office with support from Prineville Reservoir State Park. It entails adding a shore-to-shore 5-mile-per-hour zone in the vicinity of the state park marina. The board accepted that petition and directed staff to file draft rules reflective of the proposal. Staff solicited public comment from October 27 to December 20, with 5 comments being received, and those are included in your board book and summarized in item F. Given that proposed rules were suggested by our law enforcement partners who have significant boating and enforcement experience in the impacted area, as well as the fact that the draft rules reflect the direction from the board in October, the staff recommendation is to adopt the proposed rules.
Are there any questions or comments regarding the rules? Craig?
Yeah, as I spoke at the last meeting, Prineville Reservoir is a large body of water. This is a very small area on that reservoir. So we're only asking people to slow down on a very small section. The impact is minimal. So I, for one, want us to see go ahead and approve this proposal. And I'll go ahead and make the motion now that we approve the rulemaking or the rule for OAR 250-0073 as written by staff.
Okay. We've got a lot of background mic noise. I'm not sure where it's coming from. So Vince?
I was just going to say, we don't get a lot of recommendations from law enforcement. And so I trust their judgment on this. If they think there's a rule that needs to be, I would agree with this rule or making this rule for sure.
I'll go ahead and second the motion. So additional comments? Okay. If there are no additional comments, we will move straight to a vote for this. So the motion is to approve the rulemaking as per staff recommendation. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Thank you, Dorothy. And then we're going to have to wait a couple of minutes for another transformation here. We're going to move on to item G, which is the NIC Oregon transaction.
This is Jennifer. There are some conflicting meetings happening right at the moment. So Rachel is not currently available. So if we could move to item H and have Josh take that one on behalf of Larry and come back.
That would be fine. So we will we'll go ahead and make an adjustment to the agenda right now. We'll move on to item H and talk about the board meeting timelines, and then we will circle back and hit item G at that time. And if Rachel isn't available, then we'll take a short break. So Josh?
Thank you, Chair Early, members of the board. Full disclosure, I was not prepared to talk about board meeting timelines here, but I will do my best. I know that the next board meeting is scheduled for Salem again. I think at this point we can just guarantee that it will be virtual for April 13th and 14th. I know that for that meeting, there's going to be a work session on law enforcement on the 13th, as well as some other things that we had talked about this meeting, especially in regards to Brian's work on different voting platforms. And then I know that the next meeting after that, to accommodate the grant schedule, is not scheduled until July. And I would surmise that that one will also be virtual. And Jennifer, if you can help me out, can you give me the dates of that July meeting? I don't have that part of the board meeting or the board book printed in front of me.
It says June in here, but I'm assuming it's going to be July, although a lot of times we will address a grant cycle in June.
That's my bad. It is June, not July. I see
Okay,
Janine's
so
hand up.
Janine,
Yeah, that was
Janine?
just to confirm that June 16th was set for the board consideration of the Cycle 1 grants.
Okay, so if we would need to have any kind of a work session for those grants or additional information, we would be meeting on the 15th. But during that meeting also, we have a board member onboarding guide review and also the annual review for the director. So we would have an executive session during that time. So it's conceivable that it will be the 15th and 16th or the 16th and 17th.
I would expect it to be 2 days, given the amount of work or the amount of time spent on grants. So I would expect those 2 days. And then in October of 2021, and I don't know if those dates are set. They probably are, and I don't have them in front of me. I'm just looking at the board book. But I would also expect that to be 2 days because, like I mentioned earlier, what's on here, the legislative concept work session, that's going to be the time for the board to decide, the things that we might want to look forward to have the governor bring forward to the legislature for us for the 2023 session.
And usually that's around the 19th, 20th, but it could also be the 26th, 27th timeframe for October. So I'm sure that that will get nailed down a little bit closer once we get through with the other grant cycle. So and there is no indication that these would be anything but virtual at this time. Possibly by October, there's a possibility that with the rollout of vaccines and things that we would be able to have an in-person meeting. But at this point, we just don't know.
I wouldn't make any expectations, certainly not for April or June. And October, potentially, maybe best case scenario. But I think we'll decide by April whether we're going to try to explore something else. But I would not foresee that being anything but virtual at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you, Josh, for filling in on that. We appreciate that. So
sorry I didn't have the timeline up in front of me. I was kind of winging it there for a while, but
that's okay. That's all right. We're good with that. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and take a short break until we get a little bit of notification on the transaction fee item G. Josh?
I see that Rachel has joined us. So if you want to do that now, she might be ready to do so. But if you'd like to take a break, by all means.
Oh, I think that we were only going to take a break to be able to give her time to return. So,
Chair Early, Director Warren, I'm also back on. I would appreciate about a 5-10 minute break so I can get caught up.
That would be wonderful. So let's do a 5 to 10 minute break. Are we able to stop the live feed for this time?
I think what we do is we stop the audio, but the video keeps going. So that's the technology and what it allows us to do. So
okay.
So looks like I see Jennifer in the room. She's probably pausing the audio. But again, it's always good for board members to mute and shut your video off if you want to make sure you're not on for the break.
Okay, so we will be back soon.
Val, I'm back. Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I see that Craig is back also.
I'm here.
Hi, Laura. Okay, we're slowly coming back. Colleen, when you get back on, just hit your video so we know you're back on.
Hey, I'm having some video issues right now, so I'm going to be off video for a bit, but I am here.
Okay, well, thank you. That works. And Jennifer, just let us know when it's going to be ready to go live again.
Chair Early, Director Warren, Jennifer just gave me the thumbs up, so I believe you are live and back in session.
Okay, so after our short recess, I would like to reconvene our board meeting for sorry, I'm in October already, January 27th. And so we are on item G, which is the NIC Oregon transaction fee. And so Rachel Graham. Is Rachel on?
Yes, good morning, Chair Early, members of the board. Sorry, I was having trouble finding my place here on my computer.
That's okay.
So I'm not going to recap what I wrote there. I'll answer any questions you have, but I do want to provide a little bit of new information that's come since I wrote that report. So in summary, you know, NIC is requesting that we start paying a $1 per transaction fee for all transactions completed on our website. And to give you a sense, you know, the last year that they calculated, that was about, I believe it was 54,000 transactions. I'm sorry, I've lost my, trying to go back and forth between screens here. But in addition to that fee, last week NIC also approached us and said that they can, they no longer want to provide the hosting for our application, which is hosted on NIC servers and was provided under the maintenance agreement that we have with NIC, which is based on a subscription service. In effect, we agreed to an annual amount that would pay for the maintenance of the program with an agreed upon 3% per year escalation rate. And they say that the maintenance is actually taking a lot more time and staff effort on their part, and would like to renegotiate that portion of our agreement, and essentially looking at a 40% increase in the annual maintenance costs, because they would outsource the hosting of the application. So not entirely, you know, part of the discussion today or the decision. We're asking for input from the board, but I just want to let you know that there are additional costs that are being sought by our vendor related to the boats application, and that will have budget implications for the agency. So can I pause and see if anyone has any questions? It looks like Craig, your hand is up.
Yes, Craig's up.
Yeah, Rachel, looking back at the director's report on the registrations, it seems that the fee has gone up. What was it, $32 or something in the recent time? But people are still registering and willing to pay the fee. Do you think the increased cost here would change that?
Chair Early, member Withee, members of the board. I can't predict, what an additional dollar would do to, to our boaters. I know we're very sensitive that, we want to make boating accessible to as many people as possible. So, and that it would be on all transactions. It would be for the, motorboat registration renewals, for the waterway access permits. It would be, all of those would incur that $1 charge should we choose to pass that on. I mean, the other option is we absorb that charge, internally in the agency. My greatest objection to the fee as it was presented is this change was presented to us at the very end of October, after we had already printed all of our registration renewal notices. And so, even if we decided we wanted to pass on that charge, we'd already printed and distributed the notices about what the charge would be. And it just seemed like very poor customer service to then, have a voter log on and see that there was an additional charge. I really would, if we decide we're going to pass on this charge, I think it's good customer service that we take the time to socialize that, to let our voters know that, there's an additional charge, and we make that very clear in our materials to them.
Colleen, go ahead. We can't hear you. Turn your mute.
Sorry about that. Okay. I was just saying, I thought Vince had his hand up before me, so I'll defer to him.
Vince?
There we are. All right. So the 40% maintenance, is that all included in that dollar per transaction? Didn't you say that was kind of after you guys have they already said that it was going to go up? Does that make sense?
Yes. So Chair Early, Member Castronova, members of the board. Yes. What I was trying to express is that in addition to this $1 per transaction fee, which we're estimating to be in the mid $50,000 per year, our vendor has also asked for an addition to a 40% increase on our set maintenance fee agreements. And so we're looking at that, and they won't give us exact numbers, but we can pay. We're paying maybe $60,000 to $70,000 a year in annual maintenance. So, right. So it will add up.
Okay. So, but it's not going to be added to that dollar per transaction, right? That is the cap. Or is that what you guys are debating on?
So the my understanding is if this dollar per transaction fee, this portal provider fee, is something that NIC is trying to standardize across all the state agencies. So they would require that we sign a work order agreement agreeing to that fee. And then again, we can decide either to absorb it or pass it on. And for right now, it's $1 per transaction. However, I don't believe that we're locked in. It could be 2-3 years from now, they say, they need $2. I don't know. So, but the two issues are separate. Our 40% increase on maintenance costs is completely separate from the portal fee. And the maintenance cost would be something we would probably have to absorb.
Okay. And then obviously there's probably no talk or thought about changing vendors, because that probably get pretty expensive. as the alternative, right?
We can investigate, anything. But right now, our agreement with NIC Oregon is under the master agreement that NIC Oregon has with the state of Oregon. And so then our agreement for the boats program is tied to that master agreement. So like, I don't want to punt or, kick the can down the road, but I'm not sure about the contracting implications of switching vendors, but
yeah. Well,
that's something we can research. And I did note in my report that in terms of using NIC Oregon as a payment processor, that's not required. The Treasury has approved 2 other vendors to be payment processors. It's just that, we use NIC as our payment processor because they also manage our application.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think if you're upfront with Oregon voters, I think they would understand. I mean, we have charges associated with in my business for Visa. If people want to pay cash or check, they don't have to pay the fees. So it makes sense. But yeah, thanks for the information.
Colleen?
Yeah, member Castronova took one of my questions, which was about looking for new vendors. It's disappointing that a vendor would come at such a late date and say, I'm going to tack another fee, or I'm going to tack a fee onto your following year budget. So my big question would be, can we find another vendor before we start passing costs on to boaters? My other question is, I understood from the materials in the board book that Oregon NIC Oregon, that they work with other agencies as well. So I was curious, are they also going to other state agencies and requesting additional funding from them? Are they also asking other agencies to add user fees onto their regular permits, or whatever it is that they have?
So Chair Member Early, Member Moran, members of the board, yes. The short answer is yes. NIC Oregon is looking to raise additional revenue by putting fees on other state agencies who do business with them. So let's talk specifically about this portal provider fee. I believe, let's see if I can pull it up without losing my place too badly here. Let's see. Trying to see how many, 19 agencies, I believe, were affected by this. And that's because at the time the state transitioned from the previous state vendor to NIC, some agencies were grandfathered in, and so I'm guessing it's like these 19 agencies, we were one of them. So the payment processing was done at the cost of NIC. So we have not been paying for that payment processing. And just so we're all understanding, that means the taking of credit cards on the website. So that's a specific service separate from our registration database, right? The registration database, which we use to process our transactions, is over here, but it interfaces with the customer through the payment portal, which accepts the credit cards, because we don't store any credit card information, right? So NIC takes the credit card information, verifies it, and then, just passes through that, yes, the credit card was accepted. So that service, the payment processing, we were grandfathered in along with 18 other agencies and have not been paying the fee since 2011 when NIC Oregon took over the payment processing for the state. So what NIC is looking to do is to take those 19 agencies, and this is my understanding, and bring them in and have them paying that payment processing fee that they haven't been paying so far. So this was not only asked of our agency, but of some other state agencies as well.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Is there any way that this fee, if it is passed on to voters, does that have to happen in 2020, or could it be something that is done in 2021 or sorry, 2021, you know what I'm saying. Does it have to be done this year or can it be pushed to next year?
Member Moran, that is a question I posed to NIC, saying that, you know, their timeline, they wanted to start it in January of 2021. They wanted to start it right now. And, you know, I explained how difficult that would be. So it does appear there's some room for negotiation there. Like I said, you know, we have to sign the work order agreement agreeing to either, you know, going to the portal advisory board and asking for the fee to be passed on, or to absorb the cost ourselves. So once we make that decision, we'll have a pathway forward to work with NIC and DAS and the portal advisory board to make that happen. But I've been led to believe that there is some room for negotiation to give us a little more time to notify our customers.
So Rachel, then if we went ahead and we, you know, negotiated with them, where would we find the money to cover the 40% increase and then eventually possibly the $1 transaction fee, which would be approximately $84,000 for 2021? Where would we find that money?
Member Early, so you know, we're an other funded agency, right? So it's not, we can't go ask for more general fund. So yeah, and our budget's pretty much done and submitted, you know, for the 21-23 biennium. So even if we believe that we would have more revenue, which I do not believe, we don't, you know, have any additional limitation to spend. That means we'd have to make cuts from someplace else. And really our biggest pots of money are going to be, you know, those external payments to law enforcement and to facility grants. So if we needed to, you know, obviously we would look within supplies and services and the administration budget and see, you know, what we could cut back on. But I can tell you our budget submission for the 21-23 from the 19-21 is we just asked for inflation. So we didn't ask to expand our services and supply budget more than the standard inflation rate. So so we're talking about we'd have to cut into most likely those external payments. That would be my recommendation. You know, there's always lots of possibilities, but that would be my recommendation.
Well, it would be my preference to push NIC Oregon to give us some more time so that we wouldn't have to impose that fee, but then give us time also to notice voters that we would be using this transaction fee in the future. That would be my preference. Because I don't think that telling us in October and implementing it on January 1st is sufficient time to be able to notify people, especially since our budget was already submitted. Bad customer service. So on our agenda, it says you're looking for a board vote. So you would like us to give you a direction?
Chair Early, yes. I think, the way I see it, if we agree to the portal provider fee and we agree to go before the e-government and portal advisory board and request that fee be passed on to our customers, to me that is a fee, essentially like a fee increase, and I'd like the board to vote on whether they're okay with that fee increase for our customers.
Vince?
I have a question. Can it be split up like 50 cents this year and 50 cents next year to try to ease, kind of like as a compromise? I mean, that's something you could go to NIC with, but even if it's with the agency, so it only goes up 50 cents in 2021 and then the full $1 in 2022. I don't know if that's something that would maybe so voters don't get so upset. I mean, I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but they always think they're getting feed to death anyway. So trying to lessen the pain, I don't know if Or maybe it's something you can compromise with NIC since they gave you such short notice, said, hey, can you do it half this year and then, the full dollar the following? Just something to consider.
So Chair Early, Member Castronovo, by all means, I can keep negotiating with NIC. My understanding is they're looking for this dollar to be uniform for all agencies across Oregon. But in terms of whether we could negotiate us absorbing the 50 cents and the customer paying 50, that's probably a possibility. I'm not sure how much room there is for negotiating for NIC to accept less than the full dollar they're looking for. But definitely, there's probably a way we could ask to, like I said, absorb half and pass on half.
Craig?
So if I understand it correctly, Rachel's looking for guidance from the board as to whether to try to recover this cost from our customers or fund it ourselves. So I'm ready to make a motion. I'm not sure which way I want to go, but I'm ready to make a motion. Well, let me make a motion that we pass the cost on to our registration customers.
The fee would be to everyone that uses the credit card portal. So you'd be passing it on to guides, outfitters, anybody who uses the Marine Board portal.
Yeah, that's what I'm proposing. I don't know if I find that's the best option, but that's what I'm proposing in my motion.
I like that. I provided that we can get a bit more information as to when this might go into effect. Is there room for negotiation as to how that fee is split? As much as I don't want to pass a fee on to users, I also would hate to see a Marine Board program be cut or dramatically underfunded because of this shortfall.
Do we have a second to Craig's motion?
I'll
Sorry,
second
another
Craig's.
second.
Okay.
Okay, Colleen, I wasn't sure if that was a second or not, so I didn't hear that part of it. Okay, is there any additional discussion? Laura?
This is going to impact a lot of people when we start talking about some of the, like the waterway access permit, the short-term ones, not the full year ones, adding a $1 transaction fee onto that, it's like a 20% hit or something. But it also seems like this is a statewide problem when we're talking about at least 19 agencies that are served by this provider, the whole system. So, I think we have to do something to protect ourselves and to not lose money this year. But I think there's a whole bigger thing, discussion that needs to happen with DAS or whoever on these kinds of services for the state, because transaction fees and all this stuff are escalating, but the actual labor costs of providing them are going down. So it's all about profit for these companies.
Oh, okay. Craig, you still have your hand up. Did you have another comment?
Yeah, I did. So the action I think we would be taking here is just providing Rachel some guidance. The expectation that I would have is the negotiations should still occur, and we do everything we can to minimize the cost. It's just what direction would we want Rachel to take as far as covering the cost?
Okay, so the motion in front of us is to go ahead and pass the fee on to our customers after Rachel has done some investigation into negotiations. Okay, does anybody have anything else to add? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 No. Okay, so thank you, Rachel, very much. So procedurally, we have come to the end of our agenda. However, as the chair, I can go ahead and move back to any agenda items that were not completed or were tabled. So at this time, I would like to move back to item E and bring back from the table item E and get this addressed by Director Warren. And then we can decide if we want to bring it fully back off the table and take some kind of action today. So hopefully Josh is still around too.
All right, Chair Early, I'm sure Josh is. First off, apologies that I had to drop off to take a meeting with the legislator and missed what I'm sure was a robust conversation. So I guess what I want to do is go back to where I started, which is I wholeheartedly support the staff recommendation that the board take action today and support the staff recommendation. And we get so many inputs. The board has heard so much information about this, but I think I'm going to talk process for a second. We, the staff of the Marine Board, we do good public policy work. And the reason we do good public policy work is to avoid situations like what happened today, which is the last minute a group throws out a proposal and tries to unwind several years of work that we've done with all sorts of groups. I think it's good to remember that every group has their map. I mentioned that earlier. Calm Water, Willamette River Keeper, paddling clubs, rowing clubs, sailing clubs, wake surfers, tubers, skiers. And so to put forward the idea that somehow the public was left out of this process, or that others don't have other ideas, and that somehow somebody got everything that they want, it flies in the face of what I believe was some of the best public policy work a small agency like ours has probably ever conducted. And so I would implore the board to remember that certainly some of the things brought out today are important, but don't overlook all the comments in support of this. Don't overlook all the presentations and information you've got over the last year and a half. Don't overlook the fact that we've had input from our Oregon legislator. We've had input from local communities such as the city of Portland. And all of that, to me, is why we do those public processes, so we don't, at the last minute, scrap good work under the idea that somehow some group was left out and now they've got the solution. I think if we delay, it sends a very confusing message about where we are at on these things and how we're going to conduct our public processes in the future. I think a delay also won't bring us to a different place. We will just continue to get all sorts of maps and ideas, and this work where we're at with our staff recommendation is the culmination of those public processes that took everybody's input into consideration and came out with what I believe is to be the correct action. So I'm asking that the board reconsider. I'm asking that you take action on item E today, and I think it would be good for the agency and good step forward to asserting where the board's position is on using this valuable resource.
Thank you, Director Warren. I'm also concerned with the precedents that this might set for future contentious items. Again, we have been on the Willamette River for as long as I've been on the board. So it's been quite some time, and we've had a lot of different issues come up. We've had a lot of different stakeholders involved. So it would be my preference that we would reopen item E and address this in whatever fashion needs to be done at this point today. Laura?
I want to agree with what both Director Warren and you yourself have said. We got literally thousands of pages of public testimony. We have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of pages of science and logic and examples from other jurisdictions, testimony about safety issues, testimony about property damage. As Director Warren mentioned, City of Portland, City of Milwaukee, City of Lake Oswego have all weighed in on this. Those things are not going to change. And again, it's bad precedent for the agency. It's bad precedent statewide. We have legislators who are scrutinizing us right now, thinking of ways to change us, thinking of ways to be a little more heavy-handed with us. This supports what they're trying to do.
You're muted, Bill.
Vince, go ahead.
Okay, there you go. So again, we understand all the work that was done, and we've read all the testimony. Lord knows there's a lot of testimony. But just because some rules that were made in October weren't the greatest, and this proposal could be a better option, I think we should look into it. I think there's precedent to look into this new proposal as a better way of coming up with the same goal. And as you know, we had 3 board members that thought the same way, and now we're going backwards because Director Warren decided to interject and try to manipulate, and I don't think that's right, to be honest.
So Chair Early, I just want to circle back on that. Member Castronova, I do take some exception with any idea that somehow the public wasn't involved in this process. That's something that is important to me. It's something that I've always considered to be foundation for how I want an organization that I'm a part of to run. And, I guess what I'm trying to explain is these groups have had so many opportunities to put those forward, and there's been all sorts of iterations of those. And where are you going to let it end? I've seen so many maps. You've seen so many maps. All sorts of groups have ideas about how to share this water. None of them are the same. So here we are in the final hour, and a group's got another one. And I can tell you that a group will have another one. I can tell you there's probably groups already out drawing up more maps to counteract the maps that you're talking about, which is, again, why we do public process. It's why we culminate into the work that we do in a rule recommendation, is to avoid situations just like this. So if you view that as manipulation, fine. I view it as being, I guess, true to the public processes that I support and always try to encourage in an organization that I'm in.
Well, I would just counter that your own rules committee, the majority of them were against these overreaching rules. And that's what I'm pointing to. Why have a RAC group when you're not going to listen to them? I mean, that just seems redundant to me. Similar to what I've been in a working group before being on the Marine Board. It just seems like a waste of time for a lot of people involved.
So is there, right now we have this item E on the table. And so if there is a consensus, or if there is a majority that would like to see it come off the table at this point and go ahead and deal with this, then we would need a motion to be able to do that. Josh?
I just very quickly want to interject. If the board desires, I have visuals of the current proposal and the new proposal side by side. Now, albeit it's crude because the staff and I worked on it in the last half hour, but if that would be desirable, I can get that up on your screens.
We would need to bring the item off the table in order to be able to address that at this point. So if there is a motion, Laura?
I move that we bring the item E back onto the table for discussion of item E as proposed by staff and the alternative as presented by Mr. Castronova.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to bring this back off the table. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so Josh, you are going to be up then, and thank you very much for working so quickly to visualize Vince's proposal.
Thank you, Chair. So this is, so I have it up on the screen now. I have 2 slides with the changes that would be proposed for both the Ross Island section and then the changes for the a longer stretch of river, including the Waverly stretch. So I guess these are available. I can talk through them. Member Castronovo, please correct me if any part of if I'm characterizing any part of this proposal incorrectly. That's certainly not my intentions. But what I understood was that this red would be the slow no wake zone. This is what already exists. Talking about an extension of that zone from the Waverly or from the Willamette Park area to allow kind of a passed over area for non-motorized craft where motorized boaters would have to go slow no wake through. The pass-through zone from the southern tip of Waverly Marina up to Tow Island here would remain unchanged based on what is currently proposed. However, the new proposal would open up this stretch from Tow Island up to the Hawthorne Bridge, which is right here, as well as opening back up the northern end of the Holgate Channel to have no restrictions on towed water sports other than the second slide, which would now take the current proposal where there's the buffer zones like the Newburgh Pool, as well as a wake surfing restriction throughout. And it would change this whole stretch, pretty much downtown Portland to the falls, of no towed water sports before 10 a.m., but no additional restrictions on towed water sports or wake sports in this area other than this, which was on the last slide.
Yes, you correctly put that together. That is correct. And then, but except for the time through May, I think it was May 15th through September 15th. Then after that, those restrictions are, in the winter, obviously not too many people wake sport in the winter, but and that time limit doesn't have to be. That was just put in there to be courteous to others and fishermen and what have you. But again, there's some things on here that are negotiable. The 10 a.m. could be moved to 11 to give paddlers more time. Those are things that can be tweaked during the rules process.
Josh, very impressed. Thank you so much for putting the visual out there for us and allowing our conversation to continue. So thank you very much.
You're quite welcome, Chair, and I can't really take the credit for it. We have some very talented people in our boating safety section that helped me out, but I'm glad I was able to provide it for your opportunity to review today.
Yes. Okay, so discussion regarding item E, then the consideration for the rulemaking, now that we have the new proposal visual out in front of us, and we have all of the public comment that we've received. We have several other documents, rules, a long procedure here. So would anybody like to chime in here? Vince, you still have your hand up?
No, I pretty much pleaded our case and thinking that the rules that I have stated to the proposal, I think is a better for everyone involved. I think it's a safer approach. There's a lot of good stuff about it that I like, and I think it could work. And again, in the spirit of compromise and trying to appeal to more user groups than just a select few, I think it definitely addresses that. Not to mention the impact on small businesses that are going to be affected with the rules on the left. So those are all the things that you have to consider. And when you guys wanted to take this off the table, and the unintended consequences of what can happen with so much restriction, and that's what I'm concerned with.
Laura.
So again, to question, this is for Director Warren and for Josh, and it's kind of a two-part thing. I want clarification on something. In the upper parts, like Lake Oswego going towards the falls where it's super narrow, there basically already is mind your wake restrictions that it appears maybe aren't being followed. Is that correct? When it comes to larger towed wake sports boats?
Board Member Jackson, it'd be a little clunky just because Josh and I can't see each other, but so in that area, it is significantly narrower even than the Newburgh pool. And part of the discussions in October, as a reminder, were that the industry themselves and some of the data they've put out has called for 200 foot around wake surfers. And this area is narrow, and that's difficult to achieve. And when staff explored that, that was part of what went into this. And I would also, again, I keep hearing that only a select few are going to be able to use the river. I would suggest that that's quite the opposite. There's still a lot of opportunity. People can still use their boats. There's still a lot of activity that can happen in there. But yes, on a warm day in the summer, if people were following the slow no wake rules and minding their wakes, I would contend that functionally this is already a no wake surfing zone. I don't believe that on a warm day in the summer, it would be very easy for people to follow the rules and be safe while wake surfing.
Okay, so second part of my question, down around, for example, George Rogers Park at Lake Oswego, we heard testimony from a small business, we heard testimony from the city, and we heard testimony from neighbors who live kind of in that stretch. A temporal restriction is really, it's limiting their business, it's limiting the city's use of their park, it's limiting private property owners' use of their property. If all of a sudden we say, oh, well, you can use your beach till 10 a.m. and then after that you have to, your grandchildren can't play on your beach. We heard a lot of that kind of testimony, and I don't see how this proposal really addresses some of the kind of non-boat but private property issue stuff. And again, we heard a lot of testimony, especially from people in that Lake Oswego area.
We did. Mm-hmm. Okay, Colleen.
Just wanted to thank Josh and his team, whoever else was out there working on that map. That is hugely helpful to see Member Castronovo's proposal in a visual way. I also just wanted to go back to something we had discussed earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, but whatever decision we make, staff is also looking to the board to provide guidance about the anticipated requests for private slow no wake buoys, and also how to address any additional proposals that we could reasonably expect to see regardless of what decision we make here today. Is that still the case?
Yes, I believe that is the case. It's similar to what we did with the Newburgh pool. The staff would appreciate direction from the board to deal with petitions that will probably barrage them at this point, no matter what decisions we make. And so they're asking that we give them the opportunity to, see what works on these rules, similar to what we have done on the Newburgh pool.
Thank you. Just wanted to get the full picture of what's on our plate.
Yes. And there's a lot there. Laura?
Accidental.
Oh, okay. So we have an opportunity to pass all, pass part, deny all, deny part, but I think that probably staff as well as those watching would appreciate action today, one way or the other. And now that we have seen the visual, how's everybody feeling about making a decision of some sort today? Laura, your hand's up again.
It is, and for this time it's for real. I would like to make a motion that we pass item E as spelled out in the board book and presented by staff.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second and some discussion. Vince.
So we couldn't wait 2 weeks to try to get this right to look at that proposal and really dig into it to see if it's a better option. We couldn't wait 2 weeks. So it seems like we're rushing into this again. That's just my opinion. We couldn't wait 2 weeks.
Well, I think that, having Josh put this together so that people could visualize it was pretty helpful. And that's really kind of what we were looking for. We just didn't think he could do it in a half an hour. Any comments, Craig?
No, that's what I was looking for. And Laura has given me feedback that I didn't have before relative to opportunities for wake surfing around Ross Island. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I wanted everybody to visualize and understand it the same way. So I think we've got that now.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the opportunities that you're talking about for wake surfing around Ross Island would not be available with the passage of item E.
That's correct.
Right.
But he also explained that there's other users in that area that would be negatively impacted if wake surfing occurred there.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that so that there wasn't any misconception on that. Colleen?
Yeah, I'm with Member Withy. My reason earlier for wanting to delay a vote on this was just because I needed to see a visual representation of what we were talking about. Now I've seen that. Now that we've heard from Director Warren and from Member Jackson some additional information, that's really what I was looking for and why I had initially asked to delay this. So I just thank everyone for sharing the additional information. It really does help.
Okay, so if there is no further discussion, then we would need to take a vote on the motion on the table, which is dealing with staff recommendation on item E. Okay, no additional discussion, so we will go for a roll call vote. So Laura?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Vince?
No.
Craig?
Aye.
And I will vote no. So the motion for E passes. And we are finished with our agenda for the day. Director Warren, Laura, you have your hand up.
Is this the time to put the guidance of the concept of we really won't entertain, we want to get this and let it run for a certain amount of time?
I apologize. Absolutely. Yes, it is the time. So thank you for bringing that back up again.
So question for Director Warren or for Josh. What were we saying about Newburgh? In terms of we want to let it run for a couple seasons. I mean, my concern is if we put it in place for season 2021, a lot of the organizations that use the river are still going to be operating under COVID. So we won't be seeing the full-size dragon boats. We may not see Rose Festival dragon boats. We may not see, we'll see the rowing clubs operating with a lot of singles instead of the bigger, lots of little boats instead of one big boat. We're going to see people operating differently because they don't have to go to school or they're working from home and have more flexibility time. Thoughts?
For the Newburgh pool, it was not necessarily a binding resolution that the board put forward, but it was just an indication to staff and to the public that the Marine Board is interested in evaluating these rules for an unspecific period of time. I mean, somewhere between 2 to 5 years was what the way that I interpreted it anyway, before the board entertains revisiting it and tweaking it. It certainly didn't box the board into not being able to revisit it based on an emergency situation. It was an outward indication that we're committed to this for a while to actually see if it works before we start muddying the waters again, for lack of a better way to say it.
Okay, Colleen.
Yeah, I would like to see us wait at least 2 years, just if for no other reason than to let COVID calm down a little bit and for us to see what a more, quote, normal boating season might look like. So that's my recommendation, that we wait at least 2 years before we entertain any proposals on this. And as far as folks applying for private Slono wake buoys, I don't see any issue with them doing that if they so choose and they want to pay for that to be placed in front of their property. It seems like something well within their purview to do if it's not too much of a burden on Josh and his staff.
Laura? And then Vince.
I don't really I haven't had time to think about the issue of the multiple buoy thing, but I kind of agree with Member Moran on we need to have a legitimate boating season. So whether that's, 2 years or 3 years, I'm not sure. The other thing is, like we've said before, the whole education and enforcement component is something that is underway. It's growing, and I think we need to give, especially stuff that may be coming into us in Cycle 1 from the Waterway Access Grants about education, give our law enforcement and give our local governments a chance to try to beef up our river law enforcement. So yeah, at least 2 boating seasons.
Vince?
I would like Josh just to clarify exactly what was just voted on as far as the rules. There's people that are watching that are confused. So could we have kind of a recap of item E and what that all means, please?
Yes, I can do that. So I'm going to share my screen again.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, so you should be looking at, and this was in the board book, that you already received. This was what we sought public comment on. So it's kind of a two-part rule package. The first one being a pass-through zone that will start at the Waverly Marina in the south and then go downstream to the Hawthorne Bridge in the north, a distance of approximately 3.9 miles. So a pass-through zone is an area where all watercraft can pass through at speed, but no one shall participate in any towed water sports, and it also is prohibited that jet skis play in those areas. They can pass through at speed, but it is not an area for continuous operation, donuts, things of that nature. The Slono Wake Zone extension in the Holgate Channel, that was passed the last board meeting, that's still in place. So that makes all this hashed area Slono Wake throughout the season. The pass-through zone from this 3.9 miles is only in place from May 1st to September 30th. So the other part of that proposal that was just voted on was buffers for docks in the stretch between the Waverly Marina and upstream to Willamette Falls. In this area, Slono Wake zones will be in place within 100 feet of all docks and other on-water structures. Outside of 100 feet, water skiing can occur. Outside of 200 feet in this section, the towing of inflatables and wakeboarding is allowed. Due to the river width and all the docks, in this stretch, wake surfing would be restricted year-round.
Okay, thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Really appreciate that. Okay. So do you need, is Director Warren there? Do we need to vote on the direction, or are you pretty clear about what the board direction is as far as the petitions and the buoys?
Chair Early, members of the committee, Josh raised his hand, and so I won't answer for him.
So I feel like I got half of it in regards to the timeline. I don't know if I'm clear on the on the buoys. And like I said, this is a difficult conversation, and there's pros and cons to both sides of it. So I don't know if I need a board vote necessarily, but I'd like clarity from all of you on whether you want staff to permit 100-foot Slono Wake buoys when they're applied for, or if you'd like us to push back on that And if so, if we push back on it in some scenarios and not others, maybe what parameters you want to be considered. And the thought here is, so I have the Lake Oswego stretch up on my other screen right now. Places where the river is less than 400 feet wide and there's private docks on both sides. 2 slow no wake buoys off of each of those might create a 50-foot channel in the middle of the river, and that could be could be construed as a navigational hazard. It could also promote people following the rules. So it's a difficult enough decision that I wanted the board to talk about it.
Well, I think the buoys, based on the number of docks that are in that area, could definitely cause more of a navigational hazard, not just for power boating, but also for inexperienced non-motorized vessels going through there. I mean, as we know, a lot of people that are just learning how to paddle or learning how to maneuver their small craft may not be able to move out of the way when all of a sudden they realize they're going to hit a buoy. So we certainly don't want to have additional safety hazards out there. Anybody else? Okay. And as far, Josh, I think that's the only feedback you're going to get right now. Laura?
I want to look at a map a little bit, but I kind of concur with Chair Early that at some point it's kind of like what in transportation planning they call like signage clutter, that at some point you get too many signs, it becomes too conflicting and becomes a hazard. So I want a little bit of time to maybe think about it.
I think
Randy, you've got your hand up. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Early, members of the board. I think there's a component here I hadn't really thought about earlier, especially in the narrow sections of the river where some of these buoys would be maybe encroaching on the channel as we start to have some bump ups against U.S. Coast Guard concerns. So part of this discussion needs to be for me to sit down with Sector Portland or MSU Portland and talk about what their concerns might be related to placing of these buoys in the waterway, because they're not going to fit their private aids to navigation regulations as well. So I need to get a better understanding of that, and I'll work with Josh on that.
Okay, thank you, Randy. So maybe that's enough guidance for right now as far as the buoys go, and then because we definitely want to defer to law enforcement and also U.S. Coast Guard regulations. And then is that okay, Josh?
Actually, I think that's great. We might find out a lot from those conversations and whether this is truly a feasible approach to try to permit some of these buoys anyway. And if it is, if it becomes a big policy decision, then I think you can expect it to be brought back to the board in April.
Okay, yeah, because buoys could actually be deployed pretty much before the boating season would start then, if they had everything in order. And then as far as the timeline or the petition, I think you've got some guidance on that also. And so anybody want to add anything else there? Okay. Anything else that anybody wants to bring up before we conclude? I want to thank all the board members for their time and their effort, and also the staff for bringing forward so much information. Thank you to Jennifer for continuing to remind us of all of our board notifications with all of the public comment. It was, really keeps us involved and engaged. And want to thank Member Castronovo for really being involved with these stakeholders and for bringing forward, their concerns. So with that, I think that we have concluded our meeting for today for January 27th for the Oregon State Marine Board. Our next meeting will be April 13th to 14th, and it will be virtual. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks.
Big thank you to staff.
Thank you so much.